Hello, welcome to Cornwall Stress-Free Television. We're very lucky today. We've got William Isaacs in the studio with us, and William is a very fine and quite an unusual painter in as much as his paintings are at once bizarre, they are sometimes touching, they are very different, and most of them have got a story to them, albeit sometimes a dark one. So, William, let's have a look at the first picture we've got here on the screen. And would you like to tell me, well, it's fairly obvious, I suppose, what the motivation for this picture was, but tell us about it.
Well, this painting of mine was done quite a while ago, and it's tragicomic, I guess. And I rather like the idea of a survivor from the sinking of the Titanic. There must have been some sort of entertainment on that particular dark evening, and a clown or one of the entertainers has just been cast adrift on a piece of wreckage from the ship. But actually, the whole story is told with a poster which says "Grand Final Evening" before they docked. And I still find it very amusing myself, and I get a tremendous kick out of my paintings.
That's great to hear.
When I look up at that, in fact, I find them, even when I was working on them, I find them so hilarious. I was almost incapable of finishing them.
I'm trying very hard to believe you, William, but there is
absolutely true.
Oh, I love this, William. I love this one. It is so good. Could you just give us what gave you the idea?
This is the black sheep, and because I'm something of a black sheep myself, I rather like the idea of the herd. I've always despised the herd, and we all know people that are part of the herd, and they just, with soap operas and whatever it is, and there's always the individual who's going to break away, the black sheep, and he's got the book, and he's not really interested because he's a far superior, far more intellectual person. He's not going to watch some mundane, dreary soap. And yes?
Can I ask you, I've been poring over this picture and I'm looking at what is in the top left of the screen. Just here, William. Mm-hmm. Is that the aerial? Or is that... I'm not quite sure what that is.
I'm not... Oh, it's where the screen is broken because the television has been dumped in a field.
I see.
And
yes.
It's a scrap television. But actually, what occurs to me now, the whole point of this painting is that people with soap operas are essentially looking at an image of themselves. And they don't realise when they're being entertained. They're being entertained by their own dull, mundane lives.
That's a great observation.
Oh,
do you remember this one?
I do.
This is quite an old one?
This is an old one. This one is The Commercial Traveller. And this is essentially me, I suppose, because it's a thankless task being a painter, and you're always coming to the end of there's always there are no prospects for this man. What is he going to sell in this deep dark wood? Absolutely nothing, and that is pretty much what the future is. Bleak for him in that wood. He's not going to emerge from that wood. He's not going to emerge from that wood any better off than when he went into it. And that is exactly how it looks. And it's our last poignant look at him as he's disappearing. And then everyone will say, "Do you remember him? I wonder what ever happened to him."
And they'll say, "No." William, this is one of my favourite pictures. I saw it in a pub long before I heard about you, and I asked the landlord who'd done it. And found out all about your work, but it is just so wonderful. And I didn't get it at first. You think the crab peddlers of Port Gaven, and then you see that they're crabs peddling. It's just, and that was the introduction to your style.
Yeah,
so what gave you the inspiration? Just the name, I suppose.
Well, for years they've been peddling crabs at Port Gaven. And I thought, crab peddlers, and then it's how the thought process sort of rolls on, and then it seemed to me that might be a good visual illustration of a local trade, really, in a sort of satirical, punning sort of way.
Yeah, well, it certainly works. That's the one that stays in my mind. I think it's wonderful, and it was quite a job to track that down for this programme, William. That was quite tricky. Oh, says it all, doesn't it?
I do like clowns. I like happy, sad colliding.
Yeah.
And I forget what's it called?
It's called The Dissatisfied Audience.
Oh, The Dissatisfied Audience, right. And this man has been an entertainer on the cruise ship, and they were so unentertained by what he performed, they decided to maroon him on a buoy. And he can't really understand why.
He does look a tiny bit stooped and disappointed, doesn't he?
Yeah. And as the ship steams away, I mean, how's he going to get off that buoy for a start? But the passengers on the ship couldn't give a damn about him. No. All they care about is he didn't amuse them, and we are not amused.
And that's it.
And that's the end result. He paid a heavy price for not being amusing. Well, what happens to assassins once they retire? You see, there are never ever any stories about assassins once. Sometimes assassins come out of retirement, but they're not in old people's homes, where somebody will be asking them. The nurse will say, Mr. Jeffries, and what did you used to do for a living? I was an assassin. You were an assassin. Very good. And there was much call for that sort of thing. Oh, there was, especially just after the war. And so I like the idea of he's reading his Daily Telegraph, and he's still got his high-powered telescopic rifle there, and he's just easing himself into a chair, and he could probably tell you a story or two. He's sitting in his library, and you could imagine if he had a trophy room, there would be heads of various heads of state on the wall around. Various people that he's assassinated. It's like a trophy hunter. It's like a big game hunter. And also what I like the idea, it was a completely unlikely assassin, and I would imagine assassins are extremely unlikely looking characters in real life. They don't look like Steven Seagal or somebody like that.
They don't look like the people you see on the films.
No, not at all. They would be pretty inconspicuous, everyday, rather gentlemanly figure, but ruthless.
He does look pretty ruthless, though, doesn't he?
No, he looks a benign, kindly old gentleman.
Yeah. Now, Grasshopper Man, William.
Grasshopper, I know who's got this. The Grasshopper Man. Yeah. You know how it is when you're travelling, and you never know who your travelling companions are going to be, insofar as complete strangers are concerned. And the old idea of railway carriages are not the same now, but you never knew who you were going to be sharing a railway carriage with. And usually people were much the same and they read their paper, but if you had somebody odd and you're sitting absolutely opposite them, it's not the same as being in a doctor's surgery because you're only there for a few minutes. You're there for the duration of the journey, pretty much. And somebody like him, who said the grasshopper man, he said, you would think, that your eyes would meet every so often across the carriage, and then you would not look, and then you would look, and then you wouldn't. And he's completely oblivious to how he looks. But would you see actually somebody like the grasshopper man in a railway carriage? Personally, I would like to. I would find it fascinating. But for the little old lady there, what is she to think? It must be it's a complete study in discomfort, really. That's the idea. And I want people to look at the painting and feel almost uncomfortable for her. That's the sort of feeling. I like to engender these feelings of either discomfort or not horror, but sympathy. I like to get an emotional response from something that where the audience isn't sure whether to laugh or not. And that's a situation that you come across, for example, if you see somebody crossing the road and they trip over a pavement, which is both tragic and comic. And personally, I always find it comic. I like slapstick. Slapstick humour is based on somebody tripping up and falling over, but it's actually not happy. Confucius said, there is no happier sight than seeing your best friend fall off a roof. And you know what he means, because if your friend is fixing the roof and he suddenly goes, and he falls over, you try not to laugh. You hope he's not hurt, but you do laugh, and that's the sort of feeling I get. I'd like to try and. It's an impossible emotion to portray visually in a painting. Discomfort. That's the challenge for me.
Well, I think it does do that. I think it does make us feel very slightly uncomfortable, doesn't it?
I hope so.
Just wondering what he's doing there, really.
Exactly. Yeah, and why? It's always the why.
Where's he come from?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, Inner City Bird Table.
This is a real favourite of mine. Well, it's got everything, this bird table. It's got barbed wire, it's got searchlights. And that's the future of bird tables, which is something which is a very benign, kind, ecologically sound thing to do, feed the birds. But you know it's going to get vandalised. You know that someone's going to steal it, although they're not interested in feeding the birds. It's a bit of social commentary. The council will hang a notice on it saying, electric wiring, please keep off. And in the end, you lose the whole sort of bucolic ideal of having a bird table and simply feeding the birds. That's all lost. That's gone. Then you have electricians to fix the searchlights, and that's what modern life is like. The whole nice little original idea is completely blasted out of the water with all this, everything just modern life piling into it. I think it's very sad, and it's a sad picture, but it's also quite a funny one.
It is a very funny one.
But sad, but tragicomic again. All overgrown, and you know you're not going to get any birds there. It's boarded up.
It's even got a CCTV camera.
Originally, on that bird, I said, starlings keep out. It was for sparrows only. But the council boarded it up in the end because they didn't want too many birds using it.
Yes, neat
yes.
exit.
Now this has got a good. Some time ago, years ago, in fact, people may remember the John Stonehouse story. There's a politician, and he faked his own death, and he left a pile of clothes on the beach. And the story came out in the paper that when people either commit suicide or they fake their own death, they almost always fold up their clothes on the beach before they go. So when their relatives come and find them, they say, well, it's a terrible thing that he did. He's killed himself and he's left his wife and his kids. But he folded up his clothes. He was a very tidy man. And I thought, well, if I was going to do that, I would take a hat stand down. I would do it properly. I would fold up everything and hang it up with coat hangers. And put my umbrella in the stand. I would make a neat job of doing myself in. It would be a neat exit. And that would be it for me.
Oh, I love Space Station. Is there any narrative with Space Station?
Oh, of course, yeah, loads of narrative
Oh,
with the
great.
Space Station. Well, they used to say, you must have seen newspaper articles where they would speculate on what the future would be like. And, they're going to be space stations, and everything's going to be glossy and new, and it's going to be super... No, it won't. When you've got a space station with spaceships stopping at them, they're going to be shut. The vending machines won't work. The neon lights will be half of them won't working. There'll be some unemployed person that's been shipped up there to sweep up, probably some unfortunate. And it will be just like the railway stations down on Earth. It won't be any different. And for some reason, everybody falls for this, it's going to be marvellous. Everything is going to work beautifully. Of course it doesn't. IT doesn't work beautifully. Nothing works
Perfectly
at all. It's always malfunctioning somewhere along the line, and that's what it will be like. And yet, when you get artist images of what a space station will be like, I wanted to do what it would really be like. Grim. You'll arrive there and the last spaceship would have gone. Can't come in here, mate.
What time's the next one?
What time's the next one? Don't know, mate. Yeah, so that's about it. I thought I put spaceship in it. I didn't.
No, it's never had a spaceship. It's great, though. This picture is called... Would you like to tell us what it's called?
It's called The Fanatics, Deep Sea Angling Society. And what gave me the idea is that most anglers are pretty fanatical. And I like the idea of them all being crowded on this particular buoy without any prospect. You would wonder how they got there, how they got off.
I did.
How miserable it must be, and supposing the boat didn't turn up to pick them up, and they're all sitting there and shoulder to shoulder, and I think it looks thoroughly miserable. But there you go, and terrifying.
But being
really.
Fanatics.
But being fanatics, and just to catch a few fish, that's the lengths that people will go to, I think.
Yes. The great baloney. Says it all, doesn't it?
Well, this is one of my favourite paintings because it has a whole story in it. Again, I'm intrigued by performers, especially performers such as knife throwers. And you can see what's happened with one of the knives. It's clipped the neck of the person that was actually standing in front of the board. The target, usually a very glamorous young woman. And he's obviously a failed knife thrower because the whole kit and caboodle has been put out by the dustbins. He is an ex-knife thrower now. And as you can see from the poster, the show has been cancelled. And I'm not surprised because his model is in intensive care. And he's down at the job centre.
I'll tell you what I love about this picture particularly, and that's the outline of the glamorous figure. Yeah. It's like one of those things that they do
Agatha
on
Christie's.
the American...
Yeah, that's where she's got a stand, yeah.
That's right.
Well, I was rather intrigued with the idea of going into a completely empty cinema, and you're sitting there and somebody actually comes and sits right in front of you with a very large hat, and you have to look over their shoulder, and it's called the interrupted view. And this is, like most of my paintings, it tells a story, and it's a story you can all kind of identify with, really. And it's sort of tragicomic. I mean, he could ask him to move. They could all move into other seats, but they're not going to, are they? He's just going to keep looking over the man's shoulder.
Could ask him to move.
I also like to do situations that other painters don't do. Other painters don't paint. That suddenly occurred to me. That's what makes my paintings rather different from the mainstream, I think. And they're heavy on narrative, really, and humour.
The itinerant Rocky Mountain stained glass window vendor.
Yeah. Every jolt and bump a nightmare. Oh, I'm a big student of American history, and you had these various tinkers and vendors that would carry their wares deep into the interior in America from about 1750 to about 1850. And I thought, supposing you had a stained glass window vendor, and every jolt, every rock that he goes over is going to end up wherever his destination is, with not as much glass as he started out with. Well, this is a very simple illustration, really. How could one possibly balance? We've all made houses of cards, but this would simply be not possible to do. And if you were in the audience, you daren't breathe. You wouldn't be able to breathe, and you would be wondering if you can possibly ever get the last card onto the top of that pile of cards. But it's just a simple idea. I like the idea of the Joker's outfit and the colours and the rest of it. So that's it would be the sheer worry of doing a performance like that, night in, night out. Yeah, this man makes model Loch Ness monsters, and he hasn't realised there's an actual real Loch Ness monster behind him. And he's sitting, and there's nobody buying his model Loch Ness monsters, which don't look terribly authentic. And the real thing has actually appeared behind him, and he hasn't got a clue. There's a chance in a lifetime of seeing the real thing. And he's sitting there in a thoroughly poverty-stricken and depressed state with his little lunch, looking at these 4 models of Loch Ness monsters. There you go.
Halmstrom is very ill at ease. He has a mouse, but he has no cheese. Answering his heart's desire, Korff builds him a cabinet of wire, and with a fine-toned violin sets his boon companion in. What's the rest of the story, William?
The rest of the story is the mouse is gradually seduced by the music and enters the wire cage. The wire cage is this is an illustration of which is a common theme and why I like this poem. It's going through a lot of trouble and a lot of effort for very little result. So a mechanical crane hoist comes into view and winches Halmstrom and the mouse together and takes it off to a suitable location where the mouse can be released into the wild. And Halmstrom can resume his quiet studies without rodent interruption.
I wasn't sure that I completely understood this. Could you tell us what it's about?
This is the puddle skipper. And you don't see many of these around these days, puddle skippers. But be sure, if you're struggling up a hill and the wind and rain are in your face, you will hear honk honk, make way, and the puddle skipper will come tearing down the road, and he'll have no regard for you whatsoever, and he will flash past you, but he will unfortunately leap over the puddle, otherwise you would get completely drenched. And that's his whole role in life. He suddenly emerges from somewhere or other, nobody knows quite where, and he flies down the road, leaping over puddles.
With his little horn.
With a little horn to warn you to get out of the way.
That's great. Now I understand completely.
There you go. It makes perfect sense.
Oh, this is so
Poignant?
sad, really. Yes, explain. It's.
Well, Christmas is, for me, not a happy time. I don't like Christmas. And, well, it's essentially winter, but it's supposed to be a really cheerful time, but I don't think it's a particularly cheerful time. And especially when it starts to thaw and everything gets slushy. But I wondered how it would be for the poor boy who looked out the window and seeing his magnificent snowman melting, only to find there was a real skeleton inside the snowman. Who would he tell? Who would believe him? Who does he know that was inside that snowman?
I did say that they were sometimes a little bit dark.
The sand sculptor. I like people that try to make a living with doing the minimum amount of effort, which I call winging it. And I imagine out in the Sahara there would be somebody replicating a pyramid in sand and then charging people to look at this sand sculpture. And for his nerve, I would certainly give this poor sand sculptor or Arab beggar, I would certainly give him a florin or two for his trouble, because I think it's a magnificent effort. A magnificent effort.
Beautifully done, isn't it?
Beautifully done.
I suppose the problem comes when you try and take it back on the plane.
Well, yeah, take it back on the plane. Well, it folds up.
Oh, great. Get in a little carrier bag.
It's made of
It's
hard.
quite big, isn't it? It's quite big.
Yeah.
I love it. I love that one. Thanks, Carol.
You probably got a pyramid-shaped bag to put it in.
Yes.
Well, there you go.
They made pyramid-shaped
See, that's the
bags.
whole point of these paintings. It makes you think. You think,
It does.
I'm sure you would anyway, but a pyramid-shaped bag, and then we're off onto the next thing. You know, people have done this. I was doing a mural once in someone's house, and they wanted tiny. They wanted a pot on a stand and a palm tree on the wall, and I did tiny Egyptians coming down and lowering
I
themselves
remember that
down
one. I
on
saw
the
that
wall.
one.
Yeah. And then they were marching on the skirting board. It was just a bit of fun, really. But there was a painter and decorator in there who come to, because he'd done the wall to start with, painted it, and he said, I've squashed one of the Egyptians behind the door. So I painted one with some blood on it. And it was sort of squashed behind the door. And we both had a laugh about that. And now, normally, he wouldn't probably have thought something like that. But it prompted the thinking, which to me is what, the bigger picture, is what art is all
Did the
about.
client like it?
Well, it's what art is all about.
Yeah.
It stimulates people's imagination.
Yeah.
And for me, the whole purpose of my artwork is to broaden people's imagination so they can go away and keep the engine running, as it were. Because people's lives are inordinately dull, and they don't let their imaginations work often enough. And if they did, I think the world would be a far more interesting place. That's my big mission when I used to be more of a painter than I am now, really. Because what I want to do is to have paintings. I paint for the everyday man. So I do paintings that are very easy to visually understand. They're not elitist, they're not particularly intellectual. You just need an open mind, a bit of a sense of humour, and a capacity to enjoy your brain being stimulated by visual images. Well, this is apparently Turner, JMW Turner, used to go out on boats and was lashed at the mast so that he could paint the sea. And I thought, well, he was just doing it the easy way. How about having a whole raft? And then you're shoved away from the shore, and then you're battling the elements, you're out in the deep sea, and you're painting away like mad and being tossed about all over the place without the slightest hope of ever getting back again. But you have to get the sea, and to get it just right, you have to just sort of paint it like that, and it's an extension of an original concept, I guess.
I wonder what the painting looked like
In
when
real
you'd
life.
done it.
Oh, his painting?
Yeah.
Well, it was just the same, but without him in it.
I see. Yeah, I like it. It's great. I love it.
This is a particularly poignant painting. Animals get abandoned, which concerns me very much. But I couldn't really do a painting of abandoned animals. You couldn't possibly do it in as realistic a way as the real thing would be, in which case you would have a photograph. But to sort of illustrate the point, the circus and all those disappearing entertainments, and you think, what's going to happen to the pantomime horse? Is he going to be abandoned in some wet, soggy field somewhere? Because the whole idea of the pantomime horse is you're supposed, although it looks nothing like a horse, it was supposed to be a horse. So it's tragicomic again, and it's dreary and just rather a sad picture. But that's what my paintings are like. They're tragicomic, really.
I absolutely adore this picture. The toast waller. Now, what on earth made you decide to do a toast waller? Was it something you saw abroad or something?
I like to juxtapose. You have tea wallers. Well,
Yeah.
why not a toast waller?
Yeah, polka wallers with the
Yes, you have in India. You have, I don't know if you still do get tea wallers with a big urn with usually a bronze elephant or something on the top of it. And I thought, how about a toast waller? And he's made all this toast on this long toaster.
25-slot toaster.
It's a huge toaster that is powered probably by paraffin.
Yes, probably.
And as the toast pops up, he has to go like this
Put it in the stack.
and stack it up.
Do you think he's sold
A
many?
thankless task.
Yes, look, they're popping up. I hadn't spotted that.
Yeah.
They're actually popping up,
Out
and he's
of the
grabbing
toaster.
them.
Yeah,
I'd missed that, you know.
yeah. It's a toaster. It's a paraffin toaster.
Oh, yes, The Undertaker's Day Out.
Yeah, I've still got this one. Well, when we were kids on the beach, we used to get buried. We used to bury our fathers. I tried to get rid of my father that way. I was never particularly successful because I completely covered him with sand after he came back from the pub, and he was completely out of it. But unfortunately, my mother would come and pull the sand away. She's going, he can't breathe. So the idea of undertakers for fun, just going out and they're burying one of it's their day out. They have the annual day at the seaside, and they've buried one of their number, and in a coffin-shaped burial
Sand coffin.
castle.
That's what
Sand
they do,
coffin.
isn't it? They do. They're enjoying
That's
what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got this picture
Mm.
myself. And this is the Viking submarine above water,
Yeah,
but there's another Viking submarine below.
that's right.
Now, tell us about the inspiration. Can you remember doing this one?
Yeah, I do. If you were to, if you got the picture of the one below,
We have. It's probably next door, is it?
okay.
Go to the one below, Carol.
Because
Yes, there we are.
the story makes it's a rather more amusing story because sometimes I get a better idea once I've done it once, and I think I'll do it underwater because I like the idea of these poor slaves. Because this is being a Viking submarine, it's wooden, and it's underwater, and the slaves have to hold their breath while they're rowing, while they're being whipped. And that was it. You could almost hear this dull thud coming from underneath the water, and like that, boom, boom, boom. Difficult, tricky business. And this is the one above water, which makes it a much easier prospect. You can actually breathe above water.
I love the water dripping away as it's
And the
risen
mossy
out of
bits,
the
yeah.
sea. And I love the little person in the coracle.
Yeah, the little ancient Britain there. Yeah.
Took me a while to work out what this was.
He's a fanatic, and he's got a window box because he hasn't got a garden, and he's got a tiny remote-controlled lawnmower, and he's holding in his hand his remote control to cut the little bits of weed that he's got growing in his window box. He's a fanatic, and gardeners are. Tommy's Mobile Library. Stop me and borrow one. And I thought, what a thankless task that must be. Walking around, because books are extremely heavy, and I doubt if anybody's going to bother to catch up with you to bring a book back. And they'll say, hang on a minute, mate. Have you got Wuthering Heights there? Someone told me you had it. Oh, I'll have a look there. And he sets down his
machine.
his mobile book stand.
Bookstand, yeah.
Bookshop, mobile book
stand,
stands,
yeah.
and you have a rummage through them, and it's really a social service. So instead of having to go to a library, it's what the council had envisaged giving the unemployed to do, and also to save on the cost of running the municipal libraries. I'm a very British person in the sense that I like British traditions. I like good table manners, the ritual, the British tea drinking ritual, the little finger, the slice of cake. And these are dying sort of regimens, really. They're dying traditions. People don't conform to these to the social etiquette of having tea out anymore, with the fine china and the cake stand. And I mourn the passing of all this sort of thing. And as a symbol of the passing of this, we've got people that you would more or less see in a burger bar or a fast food joint somewhere. They're not really interested. And I was going past a cafe in Bude, and I noticed three of these hoodies, I suppose three characters that you wouldn't normally see in a tea shop. It's the same as seeing three little genteel old ladies in a McDonald's maybe, or something, although that's not quite so incongruous. And they were enjoying themselves being faux posh, these three particular characters. And so I called this Tea with the Underclass. And they were perfectly well behaved and observing the ritual. But you realise what a nonsense it is, the whole tea and slice of cake ritual is, really. In the end, all anybody is doing is having a cup of tea and having a slice of cake. But that's the British way, to make a whole elaborate ceremony out of it that kind of reflects their social standing, I guess. So that's that. The St Barnabas Home for Retired Clergymen's May Day celebrations. And of course, May Day is a pagan festival, so you wouldn't get clergymen dancing around a maypole. I like the idea of them really in a St Barnabas Home for Retired Clergymen, just letting their hair down and rocking it up a bit, and just letting it all hang out. And I did this particular painting and I put it in an exhibition in Devon. And somebody saw it and they emailed me and they wondered how this is. I should say it's a completely fictitious scene. There is no, as far as I was concerned, no St Barnabas. The name felt right to say St Barnabas Home for Retired Clergymen. It seemed like, apparently somebody saw it and there is a St Barnabas Home for Retired Clergymen. I was absolutely amazed to hear this. And they got in touch with me and they wanted to know if the original painting was for sale. Unfortunately, it wasn't. I'd already sold it. So I gave them a print, and this particular print hangs in St Barnabas College for Retired Clergymen that I didn't realise existed.
Amazing.
And there is a green there in front of the college, and they don't actually dance around the maypole. But the trustees of St Barnabas College are the Archbishop of York, Archbishop of Canterbury, and the Archbishop of Westminster. Right. And the Archbishop of Canterbury bought one of the posters. Wow. So he's got that. This particular painting is in Lambeth Palace.
Lambeth Palace.
And apparently it's there.
Oh, what a wonderful story.
So that's and it's one of my best paintings as well. I really like it. It has a certain joie de vivre.
It's lovely, isn't it? Yeah. I love the chap on the harmonium bottom left.
Yeah.
He's got some pipes, proper pipes.
Yeah, pipe organs. I love pipe organs. They appear in my paintings quite a lot.
They do.
As you know.
I do.